And we're going to start by introducing our four panelists, and I'd like them just to introduce themselves and just tell us a little bit about their careers and what they're doing. So let's start with Blake.
Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all virtually here. I'm really grateful to be speaking with you all. So I graduated back in 2007. I had the great pleasure of working with Lisa. She was one of my first acting professors, sort of a mentor throughout the whole time I was there as a student. And I double majored in theater and business with a concentration in marketing. So after graduating, my first several years, mostly my whole 20s, I was an actor. So I did a lot of theater. I stayed in Atlanta and I did a lot of theater around Atlanta, did a few commercials, had a few films that were in film festivals, and was a working actor. And the thing I learned very quickly is that even when you're consistently working as an actor, you'll still need a way to supplement your income to really live. So I was grateful I had also gotten a business degree, and I was also doing a day job doing different marketing type jobs. And at the same time, over the years, I was gathering experience investing. And so now I am an investor. I haven't done too much acting other than coming back occasionally to work with students at Theater Emory. And I also work for a enterprise software company called Salesforce, where I'm a principal customer success manager, which is kind of like a consulting gig.
Nice. Blake, thank you.
Hey, Sally, I'm just going to jump in because I think Blake he was trained in Rathskeller Improv Troupe, so he just jumped right into that first question. So I just want to invite, as you call on the next people, them to go ahead and answer that first question. Can I just reiterate it?
Please do.
So what we're really looking for here is to understand, like, from the day you graduated from Emory with whatever degrees, we'd love to know that you graduated with, like, what are some of the important steps along the way that get you to your current position or your current profession. It doesn't have to be everything, but like as Blake did, like, what are some of the important steps that you took along the way? So Sally, I'll turn that back to you.
Of course, Lauren Kaplan.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me again. It's nice to see and engage with some awesome students that I know are doing what I so love to do at Emory when I was a student there. So this is really exciting. I currently work at a PR and communications agency based in New York. So we do a lot of very kind of diverse marketing campaigns for all types of clients, including CPG brands, pharmaceutical companies. I myself am responsible for managing relationships between our clients and celebrity or influencer talent. So my job is very communications heavy. And I always like to say that so much of my education in dance really provided that foundation and always in some way reiterated that need or that natural tendency to, as humans, communicate. And, you know, it just so happened that when I was a student at Emory, it was by way of dance. My other major was also English, so it kind of was a natural progression for me to, you know, go into the kind of communications and writing world. But at the end of the day, I think it really comes back to my love of communicating, collaborating with others, and really just discovering like interesting and creative ways to share.
Nice. Lauren, thank you. Irfana Jetha Noorani. Irfana, where are you? I'm looking for you.
I'm here.
Okay.
Hey,
did I pronounce your last name correct? Your married name?
Yes, you got it.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Irfana Jetha. I'm a 2007 graduate with a dance and movement studies major, and I double majored in international studies. I'm really happy to see Sally. I'm really happy to see your face and reconnect with you, and so happy to be on with so many students. I'm an artist, a cultural producer, a community organizer, and an administrator based in Washington, D.C. Right now, I have my own consulting and artistic practice where I support neighborhoods, public spaces like parks and civic spaces, cultural organizations, and philanthropic institutions with developing equitable planning processes and programming that center people of color and have justice-based outcomes. I currently work on with a couple of different clients. One is a really cool project in Fort Worth, Texas called Transform 1012 North Main Street. And it's a coalition of 8 community-based organizations that are in the process of buying and rehabbing an old KKK auditorium in Fort Worth, Texas, which had the largest Klan population in the 1920s when this building was built. And they want to turn it into an arts and cultural healing space. So it's very centered on arts spaces, arts organizations, and healing spaces, social service organizations. I work with a project called the 11th Street Bridge Park, where I was the deputy director for the last 6 years. And that's a massive public space project that's a collaboration between a nonprofit here in DC and the DC government. And I'll probably talk more about that and all the work I did there. And right now I'm working on their major public art commissions for the park. And I'm a founding member of a really cool artist collective and giving circle called Vital Little Plans, which is a national collective. We have 7 artists that we're working with right now, and we give 1% of our income and 0.1% of our wealth into a collective group, and then we decide on who we want to give it to, and we support sort of neighborhood, place-based, creative and disruptive initiatives across the country. So that's what I'm up to right now. And you, Lisa, you said some small steps along the way.
Like when you think back to your graduation day and then you think where you are now, like what can you highlight any important steps along the way that kind of, because I'm sure you weren't envisioning this particular life exactly when you left school. So can you help us to understand what any of those steps were along the way for you?
Yeah, I would say it was like a really natural, organic dance. Like we learned, I've been improvising since I was a child, and all of it was go with the flow and find those opportunities that sort of open the door for you. So I actually started just like Blake in my 20s. After university, I moved to New York. I worked mostly with dance organizations. I knew that I wanted to work in dance or in the arts all the time. So I transitioned to working a lot in arts management, and then nonprofit management, arts management led me to work in the philanthropic space at the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, which like definitely looking back now at that job really like fortified the importance of a humanities-based education. And now work in public space, and it was all just like following the path and being open to the possibility of working in different spaces, but keeping arts and culture in the core of how I did my work.
That's awesome.
Beautiful. Really nice. Thank you for sharing. Susan Jacobs.
Hi, I guess I'm the elder statesman here. I feel so old.
You're not the oldest.
Of the alumni. I am Susan Jacobs. I graduated in 1991, before any of you guys were born probably, with a BA in sociology and theater studies. I was very active with ad hoc and theater Emory. I decided, I would say in my junior year, that law school was my path, as much as I would have loved to pursue a career in theater. I was realistic. My dad was a lawyer and he loved what he did. This is my cat. The summer between my junior and senior year, I worked at a law firm. I'm in New York City. I'm sorry. I am a senior trial attorney for the U.S. Department of Labor here in New York. When I first started thinking about going to law school, my father suggested, why don't you, work at a firm, see if you like it. And I actually worked at an entertainment law firm here in New York, working on cases where the clients were famous, like I worked a lot on a large case where Billy Joel was suing his former manager / former brother-in-law for stealing millions of dollars from him. I worked on cases involving the Beatles holding company, and other musicians and actors that they represented. And, there was a little bit of an exciting part to that, but it was civil litigation. And I realized, I do want to be a lawyer, but I never want to work at a law firm. I always wanted to work for the public sector. And I was fortunate to get hired by the U.S. Department of Labor shortly after I graduated from law school. And I've been there 26 years. I am a trial attorney. I do trials, and my theater background is exceedingly helpful with that. I always knew that, if I was going to be a lawyer, I wanted to be a trial lawyer. I didn't want to be doing contracts or transactions. No offense to anyone who, let me just get rid of the cat. So my theater training at Emory has, to this day been helpful. In law school, I got together with a few other the theater kids, and we would do a show making fun of the school and the professors. And one of my classmates actually ended up going on to be one of the co-writers of the music and lyrics for Avenue Q. And in the intervening years, I've done cabaret workshops here in the city. I was in the middle of taking improv classes when we had a shutdown last March, and I'm hoping to go back in the spring to my improv class, which I love. And I'm not sure, did I cover everything, Lisa? I'm sorry.
That was awesome. Thank you.
I'm
Both
nervous.
kind of combining those two into one. Does anybody of panelists have any other follow-ups they want to do to kind of flesh out that question at all? While maybe there are a few students who might have follow-up questions they would like to ask about that particular thing, about really people's journey and how they came to live their life, especially through their careers. Blake, did you have anything you wanted to add or to what you said earlier?
I guess the only thing I'd add, just hearing other people's sort of final thoughts. I forgot to mention I'm in Atlanta, so I'm actually, my wife and I just bought a house right near Emory's campus, so I'm right here. I guess as things open up and become more safe, if students need support or encouragement or anything like that, I'm around, or just want to pick my brain. And the other thing I was going to say is, the theater background I think helps, and because my job as a consultant, I'm constantly doing presentations. So everything I've done, speeches and monologues, acting, all that type of preparation, memorization, always comes easy for me. And it's always clear to see the difference in that training and the positive impact it's had for me versus other folks that I work with, where maybe it's a bit of more of a challenge. I have to put more effort into it. Kind of just comes naturally because of all the theater training. So yeah, great. It helps no matter what you kind of end up doing later on.
That's great. Okay, good. Well, Sally, let's go on to the next question. I'm sure.
Okay. So
I have a question. I'm sorry.
Good.
I'm so sorry.
Go for it, Isabella.
I guess for the panelists, my question is what was your favorite part of the theater department at Emory? What was your favorite part about doing theater, specifically at Emory, that's different from your theater experience anywhere else?
And we can apply that to probably the dancers as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. Yeah. Good question, Isabel. Let's see, I see them thinking. Susan, you look like you might have an answer.
Yeah, I mean, what I really loved, it's hard because I did graduate a long time ago. The theater department was somewhat small. I think it might be a bit bigger now, but the opportunity to really get involved in all aspects of the production. In addition to performing, I did assistant stage manager, working with Sally. I don't know if you remember that crazy production that we did with the Midsummer Night's Dream. The amount of props and cues.
Oh, right.
that Vinny directed. And also the opportunity to work with professional actors. When I was involved with Theater Emory, and learn from them and have the union breaks, which you don't get when you're doing ad hoc, you just rehearse all night. You don't get a break. There's no time to end. So, you know, seeing the professional structure, and, you know, the friendships that I made, that I'm still friends with some of these people, you know, 30 years later. I just felt that with a smaller department, you really got a lot of hands-on training, not just in acting or performing, but the technical aspect, the budgets, you know, the box office. You really got your hands in everything.
Thank you.
Yeah, I could piggyback off of what Susan was saying. So the chance to work for pro actors as a student is like by far, like, I don't know where else that happens. And even like you mentioned, like sort of compared to when we've done theater afterwards. So even, you know, in my 20s working as a pro actor, there's a difference between the people that they cast at Theater Emory and the level of interest they have in mentoring and really being there. So you can really ask all the questions you want. And even though, you know, people are still kind that you meet later on in your career, but they all have their own personal lives. So even though you might get close, it's not that same level of closeness and that same level of commitment to really helping and giving back to the students that you would find as a student in Theater Emory. So really take advantage. If you're in shows, ask all the questions you want. Really, they really want to give to you guys. And then the budgets, like Susan, yeah. The only place that came close to having like similar like costumes and like sets and budgets was the Alliance Theater. Anywhere else, it's always really low. So like at Theater Emory, it's like you're getting a chance to do things you probably won't do unless you get to like bigger theaters. So that's a really cool thing. Yeah, and then the relationships. Yeah, everyone, it's just like a family. It was for me, and I hope it's still that same way for you guys as you're going through.
Thank you. Lauren or Irfana, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think I would echo what Susan and Blake just said. From the dance perspective, I will say that you know, you were never showing up to perform on stage as a dancer. You were choreographing, you were designing lights, you were striking afterwards, you were putting up the lights. It was all of that that you were responsible for. And I think not only did it show, you know, the many facets of what goes into a production, but it also kind of made it felt like we were responsible for it and the production was our own. It wasn't just kind of like created for us. And in that way, I personally felt a great amount of pride and kind of ownership when all was said and done, because we were so involved in every aspect, as the other two were saying. And then it really is such a community. I mean, from the professors to, I was just going to call them my colleagues, but my friends that I danced with and choreographed with. One of them is now a professor on this call, which I can't even believe. We were just two, like, you know, crazy students, like trying to figure out what to make a piece about. But it's those relationships too that not only make you, you know, not only complete you as a person, or as a dancer, but they kind of stick with you and teach you, I think, a lot of things that have nothing to do with dance or performing or theater or anything like that. So those relationships are really important in so many ways beyond the classroom or the stage.
Irfana, did you want to add something into that question?
I completely agree with all of this. The relationships, I'll just touch on that. Like in the dance program, we have the Coca-Cola artists in residence, and we did, and Jalalewa Jazaler from Urban Bushwoman was here when I was a student, and I'm still friends with her now to this day. That relationship followed me to New York City, and her rehearsal assistant at the time, Maria Bauman, has continued to be a relationship that I maintain. So with the professional artists that we worked with at Emory, those were such key relationships for me when I moved to a new city. And then I grew up in Atlanta, so coming to the Emory dance program, that was already my dance community in some ways. So I was just so excited to transition from working in or being a pre-professional in the Atlanta dance area to becoming a student at Emory, and then working with my professors after university when I was in Atlanta before I moved to New York. So that community's always been with me.
That's great. Nice. Are there any other questions or comments? Okay, so now our next question kind of overlaps this a bit, but there may be different things you might want to talk about. What did you specifically gain from studying theater or dance, which has given you an edge in your profession, or which you employ frequently in your work? I open that up to whoever wants to jump in.
I can start. Sorry to jump in on you, Blake. I think something that really holds true for me from when I was dancing at school till now is like the need to always problem solve and figure out a different way of doing something. And yes, it's true in communications and PR, we're always trying to figure out how to, correct something, or pivot is our new favorite word. Especially in the last couple of years, you just kind of have to find different ways of, doing what we've always done. And that was like the name of the game at Emory Dance. And, we would start with one phrase, and by the end of a modern 4 class, we had, a 3-minute long piece based on it. So it's really what I valued so much, I think, was the true innovation and the inspiration that came from our professors that kind of pushed us, even when we were like, well, how much more can I take this? There was always a little bit more. And I think that has really stuck with me, through my work. And, I started as a writer and into sort of these communication, client servicing, which all of these professions have sort of their own collection of issues that have been really helpful with that as a foundation.
Nice. Thanks. Anyone else want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I was going to add, I kind of have a lot of different thoughts, so I'll try to be concise. One of them, I think, from theater, and I would imagine this probably applies to dance and all the other arts as well, is I feel like there's a big portion of empathy training. It's not so much explicit, but I think that that's something that I don't think everyone gets that if they don't go through some type of arts program or liberal arts, is the ability to really put yourself in someone else's shoes and take that perspective rather than just kind of pushing your own. And I think that would probably help the world as a whole if everyone kind of went through empathy training to some level growing up. But I do find that helps me a lot, especially in consulting, because I'm meeting with different companies and different people, and it's the company I work for, it's all about, for them, they're trying to hit their number, so I have to do that. But for me, it's more important to help this person, and if I can find out what really helps them and understand their perspective, and then get my company to see, okay, and try to find a way that where both sides get what they want, that's the better thing, rather than when you think of a typical, I don't know, salesy person, which is just forcing someone. I hate that. And I actually didn't even want to be in sales because of that. But I think coming to it as an actor with empathy and understanding people's perspective has made me much different from my colleagues in terms of how I do it and how I consult with people. And then also, as in theater, gauging the audience's energy, and you can read the room. If something's going well, you can respond and adjust and accordingly. And so doing that in presentations, I think it's just made things a lot better, I think, in terms of how I do my job now. So I'm really grateful for all the training that I got to be able to be where I am now.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, and similarly, doing trials, it has helped a lot. And, more than just the whole, the public speaking and feeling comfortable doing that, but also, remembering how important it is to be prepared, to be as prepared as you can be. And I definitely picked that up, at Emory. It still surprises me after all these years, some of the lawyers I try cases against, how unprepared they are and how, they flounder. And, I make a point of, making sure I know my case really, really well. And also, because I work for the government, we also have limited resources and figuring out how to stretch things as far as we can, and helping my coworkers as much as I can, like was saying, with empathy and supporting each other. Thankfully I work in an office that's very collegial. We're not competitive at all. So, and again, I definitely felt that the similar feeling, at my time at Emory as well.
Nice.
Can I just follow? I have a little question, Susan, to follow on that, because I've often thought or wondered or imagined that one of the skills in theater that might be applicable to law is the skill in like close reading of text and really diving into how text works on a very minute level. We do it with plays, but is that what do you think
sure,
about that?
Yeah, when you're researching a legal issue, it's definitely helpful. They try to teach you that in law school, the analytical thinking. I think it's something that definitely relates to when you're doing theater and you're rehearsing a show and digging into the script. Yeah, it's funny. I never thought of it that way, but yes, definitely.
Okay, thank you. I've always wanted to ask a lawyer that question. So
Good question.
Irfan,
did you want to add? Yeah, Irfan, did you want to add anything before we move on?
Yeah, I would just say in my work, like I find that I'm just not risk adverse. Like I'm open and willing to walk into something brand new, and it helps you really think about projects in a new way and think about how you're going to approach a neighborhood in a new way. And so that's probably my biggest thing, like being able to think outside of the box and not being risk averse, like being able to walk through something and not know what the outcome is going to be.
Wonderful. Any follow-up comments from anyone before we move on? These are really great answers.
yeah, no kidding. Well, this is the last prepared question that we have. And then just to warn you students, hopefully, I know some of you have thought of questions ahead of time, but, just be getting ready to bring your questions forward. So this last question has a couple options. So first option would be, what do you wish you had known during your time at Emory that you can now see from this juncture, that you wish you had known while you were still at Emory? Or another option would be, how would you suggest that students capture and communicate their theater or dance soft skills that we've been talking about? How do you suggest that they capture and communicate them to employers or graduate schools? Like, how do those things, can they appear on a resume? Or do you have thoughts about how students can take soft skills and communicate them as they move through professional life? Let's see, I'll call on somebody. Let's start with you, Irfana. Do you have a thought on that?
I have almost entirely worked in creative industry, so I haven't had to explain it too much in my career thus far. But I would say, like, when I started working in community development practices, it's a huge gap for community development. There's like people working in affordable housing, people working on small business growth, people investing in job training, and none of them are talking to each other. And then you have arts, which is like completely not used as a tool for community development and sustainability. And so I would say something I wish that I had at Emory was, like, I wish I had thought about taking like urban planning or like city planning or some kind of like pre-architecture thing or design something. because I feel like that is so complementary to dance and the architecture and the form and the design of how we lay our bodies out and how we move together and the patterns that we make. And it just didn't occur to me to like think about taking classes like that when I was there. So I wish I had done that and had some exposure to it when I was an undergrad.
Oh, that's great advice. Thank you. Susan, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, maybe I think I would have benefited from maybe taking some writing classes, because I do a lot of writing in my job in addition to I don't do, well, unfortunately, I haven't done a trial since December 2019. Next year's going to be fun because I got 4 trials already scheduled that have been put off and put off and put off. And can I just say, you guys, I don't know, I so admire you. I can't imagine how it must have been last year. And I'm sure things were better this year, but I'm assuming you guys weren't able to really perform or rehearse or get together. And I admire your fortitude, because I don't know if I could have done it.
We did it some in dance. We were able to, but we heavily protocoled.
Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I love about living in New York is I go to the theater a lot, and it was a very hard 18 months. And I've already been to about 7 shows since Broadway reopened in September. And I think that, in regards to communicating or, somehow conveying to a prospective employer or graduate school is, I think, that people in the performing arts bring a different quality that, your average pre-law or business student, no offense, Blink, or pre-med, someone who's taken a more traditional track. I do think that we bring some really valuable skills and qualities that they may not know that they're even looking for. Definitely a way of thinking, a creative mindset, a collaborative mindset, like you were saying, thinking outside of the box. I'm not sure how you communicate that, but I think, a lot of, internships I did in Los, they were all very, interested in my theater experience in college.
Thanks, Susan. Lauren, do you have any thoughts on either of those questions?
Yeah, I think for me, because I took sort of a very unrelated path from the performing arts, I early on kind of worked to identify specific classes or performances or shows or specific experiences that I had as a dancer at Emory that taught me X, or that showed me how to deal with Y. And because I work in this agency environment, like I was talking about before, like problem solving is super important. Being collaborative is super important. So finding those experiences and just, cutting down what it was that they taught me. I learned much more at Emory Dance than just choreography and, how to stand up on stage and feel confident, although that was a really big part of that I learned too. Confidence is everything when you're applying to a job or grad school or anything like that. So I really tried to translate what I knew I had gained into the world that I was trying to transition into. And it turned out there were so many parallels, and there's a lot to draw on if you just kind of give yourself the time to really think about it and just figure out how those things that you loved or the really important lessons that you gained and how they're going to serve you going forward. And I still find new ones all the time. So it's an ongoing exercise.
That's awesome, Lauren. Thank you. Blake.
Yeah, my mind is kind of swirling. I have so many different thoughts. I think, I guess to answer the first one, what I wish I would have known. I had one of my best friends actually from Emory. He's a working actor now. He's up in New York. He's going to be on I think Blue Bloods this Friday. He was really good at the connections we made with the professional actors. He was really good at really investing in those and growing those, and he would grab coffee with people. And I wish I would have known it was okay to do that, because I think I was pretty shy. I was like, oh, they don't have time for that kind of thing. But I would say, if you're like me, don't think that. They have time, and they actually appreciate, like, if you want to reach out on LinkedIn or just send them a note, just grab coffee and just kind of pick their brain. Not that you're trying to get anything from them, but just kind of hearing, because they have those years of experience, and anything that they say will be valuable, even if maybe their path is different from yours. Just, it's something about when you've gone and unexpected things have happened, your life's gone on this route, and being able to look back, there's just something that's there that I wish I could explain. And but I remember when I was in sort of your shoes, if someone were to tell me, I'd think to myself, oh no, I'm going to be an exception to this, and that kind of thing. And I think that, I hope that you are, but it's helpful to hear from people the types of things that happen if you're not. And I think that that's valuable. And then the other thing I would add, sort of for the second question, is one thing I've discovered is that, so with the growth of technology, and all the apps and all the software, and every company now essentially is having to become a software company to some extent, especially now with the pandemic, everything going virtual. There are a lot more job opportunities for folks from liberal arts, for theater, for dance, for anything, because all these software startups are much more forward thinking in the types of roles like they're looking for. People who, if you want to teach wellness or think, there's all types of roles, like at my company and companies that I have colleagues that are at, and things that you would never expect, that I think if you're sort of only in the world of performing or whatever, you might not know about. But they might need people to teach the sales team how to do a presentation better, or there's so many different things for actors and dancers and all types of artists at these tech companies. And these tech companies have so much money, it's ridiculous. And then you mentioned like putting on your resume. I don't know what it's like for, I guess, other types of jobs, but in the tech world, one of the things that surprised me when I got hired several years ago was, sure, my business degree maybe helped, but there were a lot of people who had no background in computer science or business or anything. They had majored in art history or all kinds of things. And these tech companies were just looking for people who have a lot of mental horsepower and interest and drive and intellectual curiosity. And I think that's what a lot of the folks in the arts programs have. And so it's not about your experience. It's about, are you a person that they want to work with? Do you bring like a positive, forward-thinking, creative, problem-solving energy? And they'll teach you how to do whatever this thing is that they do. And so I would just say, as you go out there pursuing your dreams, I hope it works out. And then along the way, look at some of these startup companies, because they're hire people who have bright, creative minds rather than experience. So just something to keep in your back pocket.
That's great. Thanks, Blake. Thanks, all of you. So we'd like to open this panel up to questions from the students who are attending, or other former students who are now faculty who are attending are fine too to ask questions. But we just love to hear your questions. Sophia, did you?
Yeah.
I have just a quick follow-up while students are thinking of questions. So we've done several of these panels in lots of different humanities departments. And something that comes up every single time without fail that Blake just touched on, I was waiting to see who was going to bring it up, is the value of that kind of relationship building and networking. And if I could just add on one piece of advice to Blake's extremely useful advice to be open to meeting new people and asking them about their journey, it would be always send that follow-up. every time, you reach out, somebody doesn't respond, and we take that as a sign to, oh, they don't want to talk to me. Oh, they're not interested. If you give them a week and you follow up, like 80% of the time, they'll get back to you. It's just something was happening, or, they forgot to respond. It's never personal. And so we've heard that so often in these conversations, and it's a really useful piece of advice, as you're looking to learn from people, there's a real power in sending that follow-up if you don't hear back. So
that's great, thanks. One of the pre-populated, somebody sent ahead of time a question. Oh, did I just see a hand?
No, I just basically was looking at the pre-populated questions. So go ahead, because I've picked one out, Lisa.
Oh, go ahead, Sally, that's great.
Okay, I thought this was kind of very interesting. Is social justice, mutual aid, activism a priority for you? And if so, how do you implement that professionally or not?
Great question. Susan.
Well, yeah, I mean, my whole career is basically what my office does is we enforce various federal labor laws. Mainly, I mostly do wage cases where employees haven't been paid properly, and I do OSHA enforcement. And OSHA's been in the news a lot lately. I'm glad people are finally gonna know what OSHA actually does. And that, like I said, when I, first worked at a law firm as a summer job, and I was working at an entertainment law firm, it just wasn't, I just knew this wasn't gonna feed me, feed my soul, as the cliche goes. And I think one of the reasons why I've stayed at my job as long as I have is because I do, feel that we do make a difference for people. The cases we take usually involve the most vulnerable workers, ones that, can't get their own lawyer. A lot of times the employees are undocumented and are afraid to cooperate with the government. They can't distinguish us from, from other branches of the government who might not be as friendly as we are. So, I'm very grateful that I've been able to spend my whole legal career trying to help people. It can be slow, it can be arduous, but in the end, it's hard not to be motivated every day.
I can go next. Yeah, I would say from the very beginning, when I graduated, I mostly worked with artists of color. Like one of my first big arts management jobs when I graduated was working for an artist named Bill T. Jones, whose work is completely based in narrative of Black communities in America and his experience here. And then it really evolved for me between 2014 and 2020 when I was working on the 11th Street Bridge Park, which is a park that's going to connect two parts of Washington that are very different. Ward 6, which is Capitol Hill, and Ward 8, which is historic Anacostia. And the Anacostia River in Washington separates communities majorly, economically, racially, major health disparities. And as we started to work on this project, we flipped the entire project on its head. When I first started working as one of the first staff members working on the project. And we said, actually, we're going to first raise dollars to invest in this community and figure out how to stabilize the community and ensure that the people that are benefiting from it the most are the communities that are currently here, which the community that our nonprofit was based in is Ward 8, which is 97% African American. So instead of raising money for the infrastructure for the park, we raised, when I left, it was $139 million, direct investments in affordable housing, investments in small Black-owned businesses in the neighborhood, investments in job training. We wanted to be able to have people prepared and ready to build the park and also to work on the park, to help us program. So it's kind of a whole equity first anti-gentrification initiative that we sort of initiated and what we've become known for nationally. So that's how it's played out in more of my current work. And then obviously with Transform 1012 is a reclamation project where communities that were targeted by the Klan are reclaiming space and thinking about space that was once harmful and turning it into space that's for healing and for the arts.
I think, yeah, what Irfana and Susan are doing is really impressive. That's pretty amazing. I don't think mine is anything close to that, but just in a little bit of way, one of the things that attracted me about Salesforce when I was kind of deciding on, like, you know what to do, sort of like as a consultant, the company culture at Salesforce, they have, which I think is pretty rare, unless it's growing in popularity now with other tech companies. They have, obviously everyone has PTO, but they also have VTO, V as in volunteer. So they have you have a set, like a couple of weeks that you can take off to go volunteer. So you get paid to go volunteer and do good work and, whatever community or whatever issues you're interested in helping with, which is one thing I really like that kind of drew me to the company. And then the other thing I mentioned, I personally am an investor for myself, as well as my wife. I kind of handle her account too. But one of the things I do whenever I'm looking at different stocks and different companies, I always make sure that they're a company that falls within the ESG category, which is environmental, social, and corporate governance. So there's, tons of companies that make it their priority that, whether their focus is on diversity and inclusion or sustainability, all these different things that are important for, helping us humans to work together harmoniously, rather than companies that don't focus on that. So that's just something I do. That's a small thing, but I think it's one thing I do always keep in mind as I'm looking for companies that I'm going to be investing in, following the different industry trends that are moving. So
That's cool. Just a little update, like Emory has actually instituted the where staff can, most departments support them being able to have time for volunteer work as well. That's just a recent change here at Emory. Yeah. Here's one, while they're thinking, there's one of the things I'm kind of interested in hearing people talk about is, you studied the arts and now, the arts are still, looks like part of your working life. But I know that some of you have also worked, and Irfana, you've of course made it all meld together, which is really impressive. But how do you keep that, that thing that you fell in love with? So aside from your career, how do you balance that? So we talk about a lot about work-life balance, but what about career creativity balance? Like, how do you find that this thing that you spent so much time doing in college still is part of your life, or do you?
That was actually something that I wanted to sort of go back to on the last question. I always kind of felt like as I was graduating, and I sort of knew that I wouldn't be going like the professional dance route, that like I felt a little bit guilty almost, because I had taken in so much knowledge, I had gotten so much experience, and I just benefited so greatly from the time that I spent in the dance department. And I was like, I'm going to New York to be a writer. Like, what am I doing? Like, why am I leaving all of this amazing work behind? And I think at some point, once I did start sort of drawing those parallels and like jumping into a dance class every once in a while, just because it was something that I wanted to do, it became okay for dance to be that type of a part of my life versus, the central part. And for me as a person, I mean, I was in ballet shoes when I was 3 years old. Dance will always be a part of my life, and I will always be, pursuing like sort of what that means. It was just, as a senior, it was hard for me to come to terms with leaving it behind in a way. But I would say I have worked hard to hold on to those memories and use what I did learn in a way that maybe isn't physical movement or performance all the time. And, I think when I got to Emory and I told my parents that I was going to major in dance, they were like, great. But they like didn't know where that would put me at the end of it. And I think I showed them that, I figured out what it needed to be for myself. and, I guess moving away from the performance aspect of dance at the end of college was hard, but, kind of always stuck around in some way. So I would encourage dance and theater students to, explore what that can turn into. I mean, all of us here clearly have figured out how to keep dance a part of our lives, and probably, I don't think, go to or dance or theater. I don't know the last time any of us performed ourselves. So Susan did an improv class, something.
No, we do perform at the end of every session. So the last time I performed was in December of 2019.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, so I missed it.
I mean, that's one of the great thing. I mean, being in New York, there are a lot of options out there, and I would think in Atlanta as well. New York being where they're, other than LA, probably the capital is, striving artists, but there are, lots of classes and workshops that are at night after work that cater to us, frustrated theater kids who still want to do.
Exactly.
I definitely would suggest, in the future, staying in touch with that.
And I think, Susan, what you were saying about going back finally now that Broadway is open, like giving back to the arts by going to the arts is like such an important part of who we are as performers. It's supporting other performers. So it's as simple as showing up to watch a show. It's fun.
Yeah, here in New York, they're very strict. You have to show proof of vaccination, your ID, you have to wear a mask throughout the whole show. So, we do all feel comfortable going.
That's great.
Nice.
Oh, I would say also like your relationship with your practice, your form changes throughout your whole life and your career. And sometimes I feel really close to it, and sometimes I feel really far from it. So I actually like when I saw a lot of work when I was working in philanthropy, because that was my job, to really know what was happening in the field. Especially I was working as a performing arts program manager at Mellon Foundation doing dance programs. So at that time in my life, I saw 4 to 5 shows a week. I was really working really closely with the community. And then as I sort of transitioned into other types of roles, it's mostly been through seeing things and then being able to produce community-based programming. So it turned into like running a festival here in Washington, DC. And then I feel like the most balance I've ever felt in my 30s has been like, I quit my job in September. And the first thing I did was I produced a show in my neighborhood during COVID, and it was all outdoors. And there are 5 or 6 other movement-based artists who live in my neighborhood. So we all created work for our backyards. And I didn't think I was going to dance. I thought I would just like produce it and help the other performers put together stuff. And then I ended up making something at my house. So your relationship will constantly change, and sometimes you'll make things, and sometimes you'll have really more distant relationship. And then I really wanted to sort of commit more formally to being involved in the dance community here and more nationally. So I just joined the board this year at Dance Place, which is a national presenting organization here in Washington, DC. And that has really like reconnected me in a more formal way to dance.
And I'd add to that too. I think the description of kind of the flow is good. I've found myself, that there's like almost a flow between everything you do in life. I feel like balance to me feels more like a static thing. You're trying to make everything equal, and I found that it's really more about flow. Sometimes you're leaning more heavily this way, sometimes you're more this way, and so I guess most recently for me, a couple of years ago, I was able to perform at Theater Emory with students in Romeo and Juliet, and I look forward to every so often when I get the opportunity to come back to Emory and perform again. And right now, I guess the other thing I would add is, for me, it's, I haven't acted sort of consistently in a while, but for me, it's more, I'm thinking of it sort of like a hiatus because my focus is on my daughter. And once she's in college, my plan is to kind of go back in, fully committed like I did. And I have an example of a guy who is a local Atlanta actor. He actually worked for the CDC for like 30 years. And then after retire, I mean, he had an agent the whole time and he was doing acting work, small stuff. But then when he retired, he's been like booking everything. I could give you his name and you'd see he has so many credits. He's been in like every movie. He's like that old guy in every movie that they film in Atlanta. And so I kind of think like, oh, I'm going to do that, in a few years. So once my daughter's in college, I'll get back out there, start performing more often. And, so it never has to end. It's just, like the flow, like your friend mentioned. So maybe it goes for a while, maybe you come back, and just kind of depends on what the priorities are in your life. And that's something that'll come as a surprise probably for you as well. New things come in and become more important, and other things, it'll just shift over time. It's a constant evolving journey.
That's awesome. Thank you, guys. Any questions?
Anything else?
Yeah.
Hi, I have another question. So I'm a first year at Oxford, and spring of my senior year of high school, I got the chance to direct the musical at my high school, which is like small potatoes compared to like all the stuff that you guys have done. But like, I have a couple questions, I guess. Like, I knew that after I did that, because it was like a life-changing experience directing that show for me, and I knew it was something that I wanted to do like for the rest of my life. I don't know if you guys had a similar problem, but like, it's kind of hard to convince your loved ones that you want a degree in theater without actually being an actor, and also wanting to have a degree in theater is just scary in the first place, especially for parents who are paying for college, because they don't know exactly what you're going to end up doing with that. So I guess if you guys have any advice in that aspect, I would be so grateful to hear that. But just any advice like that in general.
Isabel, I think that's such a great question. Just to kind of extend it a little further, we've several times have had a panel at the beginning of the year called "How to Tell Your Parents You're going to Be a Theater Major," which is some of these same topics that we've been talking about. But so yeah, how do you tell your parents that you want to be a theater or a dance major?
Can I jump in here?
Yes, please.
Julio.
Hi, everybody. Hope everyone's doing well. Hi, Isabel. So I was a first generation college student, and I fell in love with dance. I wanted to study business or physical therapy. And so when I told my parents that I wanted to be a dance major, they weren't really on board. One of the things that helped me was to consider dance as research. Not that it isn't, it's creative research, of course, but in a more academic way. So going to the Mellon undergraduate fellowship and being accepted into that with dance as my research topic, that was a game changer for me. And so then that encouraged me to go to grad school. And so this is just one option, but going to grad school and getting my MFA really set me up for where I am today. If I had not done that, I would not be where I am now, teaching at Emory in the same program that fueled me, and I think once I got to grad school, I'll go back. I think once my parents saw me perform for the first time for real, they were like, oh, okay, maybe there's something here. So I suggest keep making that work, keep learning, keep growing. And I think your parents will eventually come around, if it's really what you want to do, they're going to support you. And there are numbers of ways in which how you can make this work, I think, as everyone here on this panel tonight has illustrated. Yeah.
I also think it's because my father was an MBA and he wanted me to go make money, and he didn't get it, But I agree with Julio. My commitment was so strong. And also what I think helps is if you can theater and dance and studying the arts is really a way to learn so many critical life skills. You know, we've talked about collaboration, communication, leadership, perseverance, problem solving, risk taking. These are the skills that we need to get us through life, that will open doors for us, that Blake was talking about. How weren't you talking about that, Blake, how so many what was it, the brain power, the horsepower, the mental horsepower, how these startup companies were hiring people with mental horsepower. If you can somehow frame it in a way that it's a commitment to a broad set of skills that you are learning and mastering that will last a lifetime and that will open up many, many doors. That's just my 2 cents. Sophia.
Yeah, and thank you guys for such wonderful answers. That's exactly what we want to hear through this Humanities Pathways programming. And you know, you've equipped the students with so much to bring to that difficult conversation with their family and their friends, and anybody who is sort of skeptical about the future pathways available with any kind of arts degree or humanities degree. Now, after you have that conversation, if they still don't believe you, I'm going to put a link in the chat. This is something that we actually just made this year through the Humanities Pathways program, but it's about the humanities at Emory and what it means to study the humanities writ large. And you can take your time and look through it. There's plenty of language in there to equip you for that conversation. But if you scroll to the bottom, we have a section called Prepare for Your Future with Confidence. And we've pulled data and statistics from reputable sources that do research in the humanities and the arts that show everything that you all have been talking about, that employers are looking for students who are creative, who are good critical thinkers, who are curious, who can take intellectual and empathetic leaps. And they're looking for people who can collaborate. And they're looking for people who have interesting backgrounds, who can bring something like deep knowledge of dance history or performance studies to sales or tech startups. And there's plenty of kind of information and data and statistics to kind of bolster that case for you as you have those difficult conversations with your friends and family. So I encourage you to check that out. And if you ever want to connect me with a parent and they want to have a conversation with one of us about the value of a humanities degree, I'm always open to do it. I'd love to take on a parent or two in this.
Because one of the things parents worry about is that you're not going to be able to find good employment, right? And that's often what parents are concerned about. And so like what Julio and Sophia are saying is that it's surprising to people to actually find out what happens to people that study humanities and the arts. And, you know, sometimes it's directly in that line and sometimes it's not directly in that line, but they do leave college really well prepared for, you know, multiple different pathways. You know, and one of our goals is to make sure the students themselves know how well prepared they actually are.
And be able to advocate,
Mhm.
be able to talk about it articulately. You know, I think that really helps, you know, promote the value of arts education, which is, you know, fundamental.
I appreciate your guys' answers. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say that one of my classmates from theater, he ended up going, I mean, not that you want to be thinking about your master's yet because you're just starting, but he ended up getting a master's in directing, and he directed for many years, and he's been a pretty successful writer. So people do it.
Yeah, it's
I guess I had understanding parents. I don't know, but I went to law school, so it wasn't.
yeah.
It worked
mean,
for them.
I do have very understanding parents in this sense, but it is hard because both of my siblings are like STEM majors who are like pre-med or like,
Yeah.
you know, my brother is a biochem major at Northwestern and my sister is a pre-med at USC, and it's like I'm a theater major at Emory.
I have an older brother who studied computer science at Carnegie Mellon. I hear you.
So
he came out of the womb knowing what he wanted to do. Yeah,
I know he's
older than me, so you can just
it's
imagine.
crazy how that works. Like, it's like both my siblings, they knew exactly what they wanted to do, and they knew it was something STEM related. And I was like, I joined my theater department at my high school sophomore year of high school, and that's kind of the only thing that really stuck, So I guess my initial hesitation in being a theater major is kind of the emphasis that acting has in a theater degree, which is expected, of course, but that's I can do pretty much everything else except that when it comes to theater.
Yeah,
So,
but it takes a village. And yeah, so it is true that most people come into theater through acting. That's the most common way in. But by the time people even leave college, they're also doing all kinds of other things. So you've just got a little bit of a head start on some other folks. If you
And
want
what's
to
great
recap,
is we have are the student theater organizations where the students do everything and the students direct. I mean, I know ad hoc's still around. Still around?
nope, Starving Artists is, so there's they
But
there's
there's probably-
Dooley's, I think that's now called Dooley's Players, and then there's which does non-musical play.
Okay, that was Starving Artists, right?
Yeah, and then there's Ad Hoc, which does musicals, and then there's Emory Chinese Theater Club, which performs in Chinese, and there's Rathskeller Improv Company,
Right.
which Blake can talk about. Maybe you were in that too, Susan. And then
It's
there's
not.
seems like I'm missing one. I'm sorry.
Right. So that's one great thing about the theater program is it's not just Theater Emory where the directors are usually faculty or someone brought in who's professional, but the student organizations, it's all directed by students, choreographed by students, the set design, everything, which is great experience.
I think one other thing to think about is I can't remember everyone's majors, but I personally was a double major in dance and English. And, it was my responsibility as a double major to make sure that I got both of them done and that I got my requirements in and that I took a math, passed it by the skin of my teeth, but still did it. And I think at a school like Emory, where you have so many resources academically, it's, you'd be remiss to just kind of say, well, it's all about theater, it's all about dance, or it's all about science. It doesn't need to be about any one of those things because you have it all there. And that's something that I felt was so important when I chose Emory. And one of the reasons that I chose Emory was because it allowed me to study something seriously as dance that also happens to be a passion, but I got one of the best educations that you could get as a college student. And so I kind of had to figure out a way to fit all of that in so that I was graduating very well-rounded. And, I wasn't just a dancer. I was an excellent English student. I was involved in other organizations, as we were just mentioning. So take advantage not just of what Emory has to offer you at the arts department. Yes, of course, do that. But consider opportunities to branch out elsewhere and, make sure that you're getting everything you can off of out of that campus, because there's a lot.
And yeah, I also I was planning on getting my BBA with a concentration in arts management, but I don't really know what that looks like. I don't know if that's going to be enough theater for me. Or is it just a business degree with some theater classes? I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if that's going to be enough for me or so I appreciate all of your guys' feedback. It's very helpful and I appreciate that.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, this has been a wonderful conversation and really a great opportunity. I have really been inspired by what you all have to say about your lives and your work and its connection to your education at Emory. Obviously, we're really invested in Emory and what it offers, but it is really powerful to hear what you've done with your lives and with your education. And your generosity in coming and sharing this time with us and our students is greatly appreciated. So thank you.
It really is. Thank you so much. And thank you, Sophia, for pulling it all together with your team.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.